Hello and welcome. You're watching this special broadcast on NDTV 24/7 where we put your health at the center of the conversation. I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor and on focus today will be diabetes. Now, COVID-19 has shaken up the world in more ways than one. While COVID-19 has given rise to new challenges and uncertainties, the pandemic has also yielded some valuable lessons. What we eat, our exercise habits and general hand washing, hygiene awareness has garnered greater focus, much needed focus. While dealing with COVID, we overlooked the fact that people's lifestyles were severely disrupted. As a result, the metabolic problems have become more common. Unhealthy eating habits, lack of physical activity and mental tone of quarantine and isolation and even fear of contracting the virus in healthcare settings all have adversely impacted people with diabetes and also those with weaker hearts. A multi-sectoral approach then, promoting healthier diets, increasing physical activity can help actually in slowing down the diabetic endemic, as now doctors are calling it, and several heart diseases as well. Today, we have with us experts to share their advice and also giving us some quick tips on actually how to go about with it. On the panel with us today, we've got Dr. Ajoy Biswas with us. He is a PhD, PG Certificate of Diabetes and from Boston, PG Diploma in Clinical Endocrinology as well. He's a consultant physician at GD Hospital and Diabetes Institute faculty in Endocrinology, University College of Sciences, Calcutta University, Kolkata. We also have with us Dr. Rahul Agarwal, MD, DM Cardiology, consultant and head of Department of Cardiology at the Anand Hospital and Medical Research Center. Thanks so much for your time, Doc. And also joining us is Professor and Dr. Faraz Farishta. He is MD, Postgraduate Diploma in Endocrinology, Director of FS Endocrine and Diabetes Center in Hyderabad. Your name is already Farishta. On top of that, you're a doctor, so I don't know how to start this conversation with you. But let me take the first question to you, Doc. You know, we're talking at a time when everybody with diabetes felt the pandemic and the hit of the disease much harder. And even now, people who are pre-diabetic, say, or those who are more vulnerable, what kind of additional care or precautions do you think they should be taking in, especially if you are over a certain age?
Thank you very much for the introduction. And then one thing which we all have realized is the importance of maintaining our personal health. So I would say COVID has taught us many things, but my few take-home messages for the people would be people who have got COVID and are now in a healthy state, stick to your medication. So the first would be compliance. We've seen that patients are again getting lax and they're not sticking to their medications. The first point would be compliance. Whatever treatment your doctor has given to you, stick to that. Next would be your lifestyle. So I think we all have understood that be a doctor, be a five-star. I will also need that lifestyle modification. I will need that 30 minutes of physical activity, which all of us, I'm sure, would need that. And then dietary modifications, including more of greens, fruits, vegetables. And when I hear so many questions, now people want immunity pill. Let me make it very clear, there is nothing called as immunity pill. Your immunity is what you eat and your lifestyle. So this is very important. And the most important, I would stress on the mental health. So that is again a very important factor which we are seeing post-COVID. I think all of my colleagues here would agree that we are seeing very people coming back with depression, anxieties, and even after they're cured. So I would say, talk to your people, talk to your family members. If you have any symptoms of underlying anxiety or depression, do consult specialists so they can help you on that as well.
Right. Do consult a specialist, and if you're finding it difficult at times to speak out to your family, as in a lot of cases, doctors keep telling us that your core people around you could be, sadly, the reason also for those factors. So reach out to a specialist really and ensure that you're getting the much needed help, because there is so much available now. That awareness, along with several other things, has set in. Let me go to Dr. Biswas next. And Dr. Biswas, it has been observed that healthy people with no previous history of diabetes are also now developing high blood pressure, high blood glucose levels as well, and all of these after recovering from COVID-19 infection. Is this a temporary effect, do you think, or do they need to get on a permanent insulin solution here?
Whenever someone is having an infection, for that matter, stressful condition, a number of chemicals are released in the body. And there are drugs which interfere with our digestion, metabolism, everything. And it is not only the medication or the stressful thing. There is one more issue. A person gets confined during COVID time. So there is absolutely lack of activity. And you have been very rightly pointed out that there will be enormous amount of psychosocial issues, stress, anxiety, feeling isolated. So both the things are affecting the person here. The compromised inflammatory molecules that is coming up from the disease itself is compromising a person's glucose utilization. Confinement, once again, lack of exercise, increasing the blood glucose level. Anxiety itself contributing to the rise in the BP. And steroid was used for severe cases. Right. Steroid causes both dysglycemia as well as rise in the blood pressure. Now, as you can easily understand, this is more of a transient response. And during the acute phase, maybe other drugs are not that suitable. So we manage that with insulin as required, because it is a very safe drug, easy to adjust drug. But that doesn't mean that we need to put a person on insulin for life. Naturally, almost 95% of our patients could have been taken out of insulin, and they are without diabetes or maybe with other medicines.
So the good news over here is that this is a temporary issue and you can manage it. Have your doctor look into it. Of course, everybody and every human body is going to react differently. So do consult your doctor on what exactly is it that your body is responding.
Take up a very active life. Take up an active life. That's the most important thing. The 30-minute workout, have a modest diet, relieve your stress with communication. I completely agree with Dr. Farista. I think Dr. Rahul will also agree, because that is the key thing. Lifestyle modification, social connection, keep the mind and the body at peace. That's the most important thing.
It's key. It's so simple. It is absolutely free, a walk of 30 minutes. But how many of us actually manage to push ourselves to do that every day? That's the question, really. But let me go to Dr. Agarwal.
Can a very simple shortcut? You don't need to walk 30 minutes together. At your workplace, use the stairs. Mix your workout along with your daily activity. You can easily do more than 1 hour. Even I do it myself.
Oh, that's a quick way. That's a nice tip for our viewers to take it.
60 minutes you can take out.
Okay. So I hope the viewers are listening in, and we'll really like if you can write to us with feedback as well and tell us whether or not it worked for you. But let me move to Dr. Agarwal next. So we know that COVID-19 can worsen the condition of the heart patients, right? But can COVID-19 infection actually cause more heart failures in healthy people as well? And I ask this question after having done shows and shows on how young people in their 30s and 40s were suddenly gone in a snap like that with no prior history of heart disease. People who were healthy, people who were said to be fit as well. Why are we seeing this trend, Doc?
See, the COVID affects heart in two major ways. One is the direct involvement of the heart. That is because of the myocarditis. In that, the virus directly goes into the heart and causes the damage. So this is a condition that occurs in the first phase of the disease, that is the first 7 days. And it is more severe in critically ill patients. These are the sick patients who are in the ICUs. So the myocarditis causes direct damage to the heart, and it causes the reduction in heart function in these patients. And it can occur in healthy, absolutely healthy individuals also. So this is the first way it causes the damage. The second, the more common and more dangerous one, is that the virus causes increase in blood clotting. In that, the amount of blood clot forming in the body, both in the artery and in the vein, are much increased. So what we see is a phenomenal increase in the number of heart attacks. So these heart attacks are the ones that are giving rise to sudden deaths. And unfortunately, even once you are infected with COVID, the effect does not wane away in a day, a 2 day, a week or so. Even after 6 months, the increased clotting tendency tends to persist in certain number of patients.
Oh, I see.
So this, yeah, and this is quite unique to this virus. We have not seen these effects previously in other types of virus. This clotting tendency and the virus is something quite new, and it has baffled the field of medicine, especially the field of cardiology a lot.
Right.
And
I was
talking to
hearing
my
3
friends
months
across the
for
globe-
now, but you are saying up to 6 months you're seeing the impact?
Definitely up to 6 months. Definitely up to 6 months.
And is there a particular age group where you think it's impacting more?
I have seen heart attacks as young as 17 today.
Wow.
17, 18, it's a pretty disaster. Not only
And-
heart attacks, limb amputations, hand amputations, it goes to any part of the body. My colleague in neurology was baffled by the huge amount of strokes he's getting. And that too young stroke, pretty young strokes.
And you're saying that it is all connected to COVID?
Definitely, definitely. The increased coagulation cascade due to COVID is a well-known phenomena. But I would say it's not that well understood. Still, we are trying to understand the reasons behind it, how it causes the coagulation cascade disturbances. But the number of heart attacks increase has been phenomenal. And this is not in India, it's all across the globe. I discuss with my friends everywhere. They tell me they are getting young MIs like anything.
Wow, now that should really be ringing some alarm bells over there. And that's a good note actually to pause and take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion on trying to understand what exactly COVID has done to our bodies, both in terms of diabetes and also heart problems. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We continue to have discussion on diabetes, how exactly COVID has impacted your diabetes, even if you don't have it yet, and how has it impacted our heart as well. Let me take the next question to Dr. Farishta there. Doc, why are Indians more predisposed to developing diabetes? Now, we've seen people who are not obese also develop diabetes, people who have a fit and healthy life not being able to escape it either. Why does it happen more with Indians?
See, I would label urbanization as one of the major factors which has changed many things. And it goes way back to our genes. You know, genetically, all of us are prone for developing diabetes as Asians when you compare it with our Western population. You will see their BMI of 25 is normal for them, but for Indians, we have a cutoff at 23.5. Because the moment our BMI increases, we are prone for developing diabetes. So the reasons are genetic, central obesity, high amount of visceral fat, and insulin resistance. So these are the few factors which play a key role in increasing the amount of diabetes. I would say we all are baffled by the epidemic or the pandemic of COVID, but let me tell you the alarming figures. By 2030, you will see that we will have 300 or maybe more than that million people with diabetes, out of which 30% will be in India and China. So look at the high amount of numbers which we are going to get. So it is very important for all of us to understand that this is the right time. And it is like a gun which is preloaded. It just needs a trigger for all of us. So if we are obese, if we have a family history, if we have hypertension, if we have dyslipidemias, we are more prone for developing diabetes. So these risk factors trigger the gun and the bullet is released. So it is very important that we take the lifestyle seriously, not only at age of 30 or 40, it has to go to the school level as well.
Right, so you're saying it's a lifestyle that we got to adopt, right? But talking about obesity, I just want to dwell on that a little more and let me go to Dr. Biswas on that one. Now, obesity, like Dr. Farishta also said, is a major risk factor for diabetes, right? Can obese people get rid of diabetes if they reduce their weight and follow a healthy lifestyle? What I'm really trying to understand is this reversible in some way?
To a large extent. That's the only positive message we can percolate, that obesity stands to be the common soil for increase in worsening heart failure, worsening hypertension, worsening diabetes, lipid disorders, and the mechanical issues like back pain, knee pain, even the origin of cancer in a person. So if we can address obesity in an appropriate way, that is essentially a balance of 4 components: a healthy eating habit, balanced, timely eating habit, adapting an active life, not a mere sedentary life. I remember one of my patients remembering the way he or she used to exercise. I asked them, how long do you exercise a day? They said, sir, I play cricket every day. I said, how long? Sir, till the battery of my mobile lasts. Probably time has come to change this attitude. Playing on the ground, doing physical activity is probably call of the hour. Third, managing the stress. Depression, eating disorders can immensely contribute to weight gain. And fourth, and most importantly, not to have junks, not to have irregular eating things. We Indians are notorious for junks. We Indians are notorious for having an extremely sedentary lifestyle. If we can just limit what we eat and how we spend our calories, probably we can achieve the balance. And newer molecules are also coming up besides lifestyle to address obesity in a large way. And that will definitely help all these issues.
I see. Okay, let me talk about heart next, and let me go to Dr. Agarwal on that note. And I want to ask a woman's perspective over here. Now, there are apprehensions, and a lot of people talk about it now, on how birth control pills can actually contribute to hearts getting weaker, to heart attacks as well. And, you know, we are in the era where PCOS is commonly seen in every second woman now in the country. So are birth control pills also contributing to heart diseases? Is there a need to relook at that?
See, oral contraceptive pills have been there for the last 50 years. And modern oral contraceptive pills are mainly of the 2 types. That is a combination pill containing a low dose of estrogen and progesterone. These are the 2 hormones that are commonly used, and progesterone only pills. Since the last 50 years, large number of studies have been done on OC pills, as we doctors call them. In that, they have shown a small increase in the number of both the venous clot, the clot in the legs that we call as a deep vein thrombosis, and also a small increase in the heart diseases. So the increase in heart diseases is small, not that much significant if used in patients properly. We should avoid OC pills in patients with history of hypertension, diabetes, obesity, those who are smoking, and those who have a family history of early onset heart disease. If we avoid in this patient, OC pills are mostly safe. They also have certain advantages in that they prevent mortality due to deaths due to unwanted pregnancy. They also prevent anemia developing, that is a decreased blood, and also help in PCOD, PCOS, and in another way, they also help in containing certain forms of cancer. So the mortality disturbances in young patients due to OC pills, especially the modern OC pills, is low if used carefully. Yeah, there are
If
different
used
side effects.
carefully being the operative word
the
there.
newer OC pills are generally quite safe. I would recommend them for an age group of less than 35 years in fit individuals.
Okay, and if you go beyond 30 in that age group?
There we have to be a bit careful. OC pills you'll have to be a bit careful beyond 35. 35 is the one that has been red marked by the WHO
All right.
for South Asians.
Right. Good to have that
35,
information. Now, well, that's all the time we have on today's program. Thank you so much, Dr. Biswas, Dr. Agarwal, Dr. Farishta, for sharing such insightful knowledge really for everybody to tap onto, and something all of us can adapt in our day-to-day. It's been lovely talking to all of you. That's it on the program. We'll see you again later. Bye-bye.